Can you talk about your version of the genesis of how you came up with this?
This particular version?
Yeah.
The way it came about was we had sort of been kicking around various ideas, and when Glenn came on board, it was Glenn's suggestion that we use the sort of lesser-known villains. I was obsessed at the time with wanting to do Batman more like Batman, way back Batman, more detective Batman, because that was appealing to me, and so we sort of melded those two ideas. And then we started looking at all the old comic books, the really way back comic books, and going through the different stuff. And so once we sort of clicked into, okay, we're going to do like a classic, more noirish detective type of show with villains we haven't seen before. And then we looked at Alfred, and there was stuff here and there about Alfred's past, of his history, that I never knew existed, and I'd never heard, and I don't believe it had ever been talked about in any of the TV shows or any of the movies. His MI6 background, what was he like? And we were like, well, he's always been portrayed as sort of more of an upper crust man, and we said, well, if he was MI6 guy, let's make him a little bit more street. I was also reading this book called Bitter Seeds. If anybody's read Bitter Seeds, fantastic book, by the way, which is about World War II, and there's a paranormal aspect to it. But there was a character in that book that I really liked a lot, and he was more of a working class guy. So we said, let's make Alfred. What if Alfred came from more of a working class background, more street smart, and what if he was Sean Connery from The Untouchables? That's what he said. And although everybody seems to think he's Jason Statham in all the reviews and stuff, which is the first time that we even thought of Jason Statham.
70s Michael Caine, by way of
70s Michael Caine from
Get Carter.
From Get Carter. Yeah. Thank you. Exactly. Yeah. So once we sort of hit on that and put that combination together, we were like, cool. And then the way Katana came about was they didn't want us to do. They didn't want Robin involved in the story at the moment, and we wanted to figure out something different. And we were like, well, if Alfred is getting on in years, and he is, he knows he won't be around forever. So what do we? Okay, well, let's find somebody that would fit with Alfred, that Alfred knows, that would fit with somebody that he would trust to take over for him. And we'd already created in the backstory for Alfred at that point, which it was revealed in episode 2, so I'm not giving anything away, that Alfred had a partner who was killed. And we said, well, what if we made her, that's his goddaughter. So Alfred took care of it. And we had this huge backstory that you guys unfortunately will never ever hear about. But basically this whole backstory of that Alfred felt, we're responsible for the death of her father, so he sort of took care of her. He was the one who brought her to America and put her in good boarding schools, and then she went off, and we're going to find out what happened with her and everything. But so that was how we sort of hit upon the Katana thing. So it was kind of more of an organic thing, because we knew we had to have a character that Alfred was going to trust to take over. And that's it. That's sort of the scope of those three. Those were the three main characters. Those were all the things that we wanted to concentrate on, and we just had to figure out. Once we figured out their sort of personalities, how did they fit together and everything, and it came together pretty quickly, as I remember. I mean, I think for it took us about a month or so to sort of hit that. We'd already been working. I'd already been working on the show for probably a year before that, but. So we were also under the gun. We had to, get the thing into production too, and started up. Glenn had never worked in CGI before. I knew how hellacious CGI can be to work with, especially with an adventure show and where there's action and people actually physically touching each other. It's a nightmare. But so I think it came together relatively fast. The harder part was the villains, choosing the villains, and we took the tact of. Glenn had some ideas for villains he wanted to explore, and then I went back into the comic books and found villains. And DC was very kind with us, where they said, if you find, a villain that you'd like to use, but he doesn't, because we were looking for villains who would allow us to illustrate different aspects of the personalities of the characters, all the way down to like Barbara Gordon and Lieutenant Gordon, who all go through changes during the series, and Batman and Katana and Alfred. So the villains had to sort of in some way affect them. They couldn't just be sort of pick a villain and stick it in, and then we're going to see an episode with this villain, and it's not really going to affect our characters anyway, except for the fact that they defeat them. We wanted villains who were going to evoke some sort of change in the characters. And DC was very kind, and they said, listen, if you find a character, Magpie is the best example. If you find a character that you guys really want to use, but her personality or aspects of her don't exactly fit the story you want to tell, feel free to change her if you want. Because Magpie, I mean, I think she's only in a couple of episodes in the comic books. There wasn't a lot about her backstory there. So they were like, yeah, as long as you're not, I mean, we ran everything by them and he said, as long as you guys don't like literally gut something that is canon, as they say, it's fine. I mean, one of the interesting things about Batman is there's been so many different permutations of Batman that it's virtually impossible to say what's canon and what's not. Even going back to the whole gun thing, I mean, if you went back to the original comic books, Batman had a gun. So, in the very, very, very beginning. We got a lot of heat because they said Alfred has guns. We try to explain that Alfred he's not running alongside Batman in the show with guns. It never happens. But there are instances in the comic books where Alfred has a shotgun, and he is a guy that has used guns in the past. So, there you go. So a long-winded answer to that question.
Barbara Gordon's in the show?
Oh yeah, Barbara Gordon's in the show. Yeah, she's introduced in the second episode, and she plays her part gets sort of, as the show goes, her part gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's because we're leading up to something with her, which I can't tell you. But
I could guess.
Yeah, you might be wrong though. I've seen the guessing online, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not what's happening.
I noticed in the first episode we already have Michael Holt,
yes,
and we also have metahuman powers. So it's very interesting that you were starting out with having hints at a much bigger universe here. Is there anything that you can say? You're
going in the right direction. You could probably guess maybe where we're going. I'm not allowed to say where we're going, but you can guess if you see if you're aware of some of the characters or villains or pseudo-villains that are going to be coming up in the show down the line. You can probably guess what we're moving towards, and you wouldn't be wrong. But I cannot say what we are doing.
I assume that with Simon Stagg, it's just a stealth Metamorpho pilot. We're just going to get a Metamorpho animated series next year.
Oh, sure. Yes. You know what? That might be the case if it were for the fact that his CGI Metamorpho is incredibly hard to do. I think he caused the most terror amongst the animators because I don't think I'm giving anything away. I think everybody knows Metamorpho is going to be appearing in the show at some point. Yeah, he's a tough character. Anytime you have characters that can morph in CGI, it's just really hard. So we figured out a way to do it. Or Glenn, I should say, figured out a way to do it. But it's pretty cool. But yeah, chances of him getting his own show, limited. But yeah.
Was there... Batman's been a pretty constant presence in cartoons since 1982. Was there ever a time when you guys were like, maybe we should, take a little bit of time off from doing Batman, or was there just like, all right, time for a new Batman show?
That's a question sort of above my pay grade because I don't make those. I'm just, I was hired based on work I did on. They liked what I did on Scooby-Doo, and they also hired me too because they knew that I wasn't a complete sort of like totally immersed in the world. I had a working knowledge of the world when I first started. I have a huge knowledge now, but when I first started, I was coming at it from the point of view of sort of your everyday fan, and that's what they wanted because they want a show that's going to appeal to both the fans and to other people. In terms of why they chose Batman, they chose it for exactly the reasons you think. It's because Batman is a very popular character. He's been continually popular, and he's a character that they feel people want to see, new permutations of it. The tricky part is always, we will continually live in the shadow of your Bruce Timm's original show, which is awesome, and it's always a matter of how do we do something that pays homage to all of that, but is also its own unique beast. And I think we kind of got there with this one. I think a lot of it helped that we were using villains that you'd never seen before. We were going in directions with the storytelling that hadn't really been explored. So he just gives you a different wrinkle of this character. And it's also, too, Batman happens to be an interesting guy. I mean, he's psychologically messed up. he has flaws, and a lot of the villains, like Superman, for instance, is a tough villain. A tough hero to portray because he's perfect in so many ways. And there was a push for a while to make Batman a little bit more perfect, and I've seen a bunch of fans have talked about that. The Bat God, they refer to him as, and we specifically were like, we don't want to do that. We want to make a guy that's super intelligent, but he is flawed. He is flawed, and you'll see in from like every episode, at least in the first bunch of episodes, he gets his ass kicked all the time. He makes mistakes because he's still learning. And he doesn't know everything yet. And I think that's why Batman is also a popular character, because he is flawed. At his core, he is a flawed human being who's trying to overcome that and be better. And that makes an interesting character. You can tell interesting stories with a flawed character much more than you can with a perfect character. There you go.
How long does it take to produce an episode, to create an episode?
I think my understanding is it takes about 9 months to a year per episode. So, to give you an example, I think, from the time we first started writing the pilot to when we saw the finished version of the pilot, it was well over a year. So I believe, from script to from script to sort of rough animation or getting a rough before the lighting pass is usually the last pass, to there it's about 9 months. And then we post, and then once you pull it all through post with music and fixes, it's about a year. Yeah, so a year per episode, which is roughly like almost triple what a normal animated show takes. Yeah.
So how many episodes are you working on?
At any one time, we're working on probably 5 episodes at a time. The way it works is we break an episode. I think we were supposed to be breaking an episode every week, and it ended up being every 2 weeks because there's no staff really. There's me. In the beginning, it was just me and Glenn, and then it became me, Glenn, and a guy named Mark Banker who came on. And so it would really be the 3 of us, and then when Glenn started getting busy with the CGI, it just became Mark and I, and then we bring Glenn in. And the way it usually works is we would break these stories for it took us about a week to break the stories. And then we'd sit with Glenn, and then Glenn would doodle or draw or come up with how the character was going to look or tell us what we could and couldn't do, and he would add his notes and stuff, and then we would pitch it to the network. 9 times out of 10, when we pitched the story, it got completely eviscerated, and then we'd have to go back to the drawing board and start over again. So it took about 2 weeks per episode to sort of get the story to the point where we could actually then go to outline. And the way a lot of shows, the way it works is when you're dealing with where you have virtually no staff, is you hire freelancers to come in and pitch you ideas for episodes. And then you pick one and you go, okay, we're going to do this episode, and then you all break it together. The way we did it on this show was we did it all ourselves. We broke the entire season internally because we had a particular story we wanted to tell, and then we would bring writers in and go, this is what you're going to do, and here's the outline. So, which was fortunate because it was they just couldn't. It allowed us to actually get some really good writers in, like we had Len Wein, who created Wolverine, those guys. Greg Weisman came in and did an episode for us. Jim Krieg, who did Green Lantern, did work for us. Mike Ryan. We got Adam Beecham, who writes the comic books. So we were able to get all these guys to come in because they knew that we were just going to we were literally going to hand them the story and go, write us based on this beat sheet, write us an outline, then write us a script. And it wasn't going to be this sort of jump through a bunch of hoops for me and maybe I'll give you a job. It was sort of, come in, you got your job, here's the job, we know you can write, you guys are all great, here's the story, write us a great story based on this beat sheet. And that ended up saving us time too, because when you do that, you don't then get a script back 2 weeks later that's unusable. When you're giving them such a detailed outline, you know what you're going to get back. 75% of it should be usable. And if it's not, that writer's never going to be hired again. So we didn't have that experience, thankfully, but because it's just, you can't, it takes too much time to go back and completely rewrite somebody's stuff. So that's how we did it. We were very succinct with what we gave people. We knew the characters, we knew the story we wanted to tell, and we just trusted them then to take it and run with it. So, there you go.
Can you name a couple of characters that you're looking forward to seeing, the villains?
Anarchy is a fun one. The one we're going to be showing today, which is Humpty Dumpty, is a fun one. because we really had a lot of fun with his backstory. Some of the characters, I saw some other stuff on the line, like, we wanted to know more about such and such backstory, and it's like, some of the characters, some of the villains, we are going to go into their backstories, and like how they became who they became. Other ones, not as much. Humpty we do. See, Humpty's a really cool one. Lady Shiva, who's going to be coming up, is really cool. Let's see, I'm trying to run ones I can say without getting in trouble. Let's see, Lady Shiva's really cool. Silver Monkey is really cool. There's a couple of villains coming up that are awesome that I can't talk about, unfortunately.
That's cool.
I think those are the guys I could probably mention right now because they're in the first bunch of episodes. But I can tell you that there's some stuff that's going to happen towards episode 13, 14 that is kick-ass, and it's going to be people are going to be like, oh my god, did they really do that? So it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun with what we're going to do with Gotham City. A lot of fun what's going to happen with Jim Gordon and Barbara Gordon and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.